Good evening and welcome to Scotland at 7 here on Broadcasting Scotland. My name's Kenny McBride and I'm joined this evening by a regular guest from the SNP Socialist Group, Chris McCusker. Chris, how are you doing this evening?
Evening, Kenny. I'm not bad.
Very good to hear it. Well, we start this evening, as we always do, with our coronavirus statistics update. And as of 2 p.m. today, a total of 1,501,879 people in Scotland have been tested through NHS Scotland labs and UK government regional testing centres since the start of the pandemic. Of these, 1,336,952 were confirmed negative, 164,927 were positive. There were 1,165 new confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Scotland today, and sadly, there were also 71 new reported deaths. Of course, this will be an underestimate of the total number of cases, as not everyone with the virus will show symptoms and not everyone will necessarily get tested. As always, we do urge you, if you are showing symptoms of a new, dry, persistent cough, a change in your sense of taste or smell, or a fever, then please do book a test as soon as you can. Of the people who have tested positive, there were 1,989 people in hospital last night, 150 of whom were in intensive care. And the number of patients in Scotland who have died from complications caused by the coronavirus infection now stands at 5,376. This number only includes those who have died in hospital having received a positive test for the virus. The latest UK daily figures published today show that 91,470 patients who tested positive for COVID-19 have sadly died from their illness, an increase of 1,610 since yesterday. This number refers to deaths in all settings, not just those in hospitals. And we also have the Office for National Statistics report covering deaths in England and Wales for the week ending the 8th of January, which was week 1 of the new statistical year. In that week, there were 5,597 deaths registered in England where the novel coronavirus was mentioned on the death certificate, up from 2,834 the previous week. In Wales, that number was 454, up from 310 the previous week. Part of this steep rise will be related to delays in registration caused by the Christmas and New Year holidays. This takes the total number of COVID-related deaths in England from the start of the pandemic up to the 8th of January to 87,726. The total for Wales is 5,417. Combined with the totals for Scotland and Northern Ireland, this takes the total at that date to around 101,000. Since then, there have been almost 15,000 more COVID-19 deaths across the UK. And before we go on with the rest of today's news, if you would like to join the conversation here, you can do so on Twitter by following us at Broadcast Scot and using the hashtag Scotland at 7. Now, I've said before, if you're watching live, we can put your tweets up on the screen. But if you're watching on catch up at any other time, then do please still tweet about it. It's really useful for us to know who's watching and when. So do please use the hashtag and let us know when you do watch the show. But our first story tonight, current lockdown measures will stay in place across mainland Scotland and some island communities until at least the middle of February, the First Minister confirmed today. In addition, Barra and Battersea will move into lockdown from midnight tonight, following a sharp increase in infection rates. The rest of Cumherl and Shear will remain in level 3, and I apologise to our Gaelic-speaking viewers. Schools across Scotland will also continue to use remote learning until at least the middle of February, except in the case of vulnerable children and those of key workers. During an update to Parliament, the First Minister said that although lockdown appears to be having an impact on case numbers, transmission of the virus remains too high to relax restrictions. Nobody who lives in an area under lockdown should leave or remain outside their home except for an essential purpose like caring responsibilities, outdoor exercise, or work that cannot be done from home. These measures will be kept under consideration, and Parliament will be updated again following a review by the Cabinet on February the 2nd. So, Chris, not maybe the news that people wanted to hear, but given the fact that we're still over 1,000 new cases per day, perhaps not the biggest surprise.
No, not the biggest surprise. And I really would wish that people would start screwing it up. Everybody must be getting a bit cheesed off at the uh, level of lockdown restrictions that we're currently going through. My son Kieran actually posted that it's been a year since he's been able to screen a 35mm film in the DCA. So that's not good. Especially for someone that's got a passion for his job. So people, honestly, people just have to be as careful as they were in March when we were in the most severest of lockdowns, and they have to stop pushing at the boundaries of the law. And I've seen it in food shops and retail parks, and folk are just sort of as soon as they come out the shop, they just take the mask off and stuff like that, rather than wait until they get to their car, or so it's not good. And as the First Minister said again today, the daily statistics are still slightly higher than what you would like. So, I would just reiterate that people need to screw their nut.
Yeah, having said that though, Chris, I mean, we were up close to 2,000 cases a day when these stricter restrictions were introduced. We're now down to just over 1,000. It does seem that things are working. We are moving in the right direction. Do you think people are willing to kind of give it another few weeks until we do get this back under control?
I think, yeah, you're quite right to point those statistics out, Kenny, and I would I would suggest that the majority of the people are willing and able to put up with it for slightly longer in order to so that we could possibly see the wood for the trees, come February. But if Nicola has demonstrated time and time again that she's no shy in coming forward. And if people don't screw the nut, then, she is not hesitant to keep the restrictions, for as long as is necessary. And the only thing, the difference between Nicola and Boris is the fact that although Nicola is concerned, obviously, about the Scottish economy and stuff like that, it's not the driving factor. Whereas the Boris Johnson administration is all about getting the economy clicking over as fast as possible.
Yeah, well, speaking of that, we do have a move from the British government around the economy now. And the UK government's business secretary, Kwasi Kwarteng, has confirmed that his department is reviewing how EU employment rights protections could be changed following Brexit, while insisting that they will not be watered down. Following reports last week that the government was examining EU rules such as the Working Time Directive, which sets a maximum 48-hour week, ministers said they were not eroding protections. However, speaking to the Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy Committee today, Kwarteng confirmed his department was carrying out a consultation with business leaders on EU employment rules, including the Working Time Directive. Commenting, the SNP's shadow business secretary, Drew Hendry, said, despite initially dismissing the reports of watering down rights, the business secretary has now confirmed the Tory government's intention to review workers' rights post-Brexit, threatening a Tory race to the bottom in standards. It's clear beyond any doubt that the only way to protect Scotland's interests and workers is to become an independent country and in the EU. So, Chris, I know this will be something that perhaps doesn't surprise you, but I know you'll have fairly strong feelings about it.
Yeah, and we have to view this for what it is, and obviously I get a bit nervous when I hear about the Tories wanting to discuss workers' rights. And what's quite alarming to me is the fact that Kwasi Kwarteng was basically saying that he wants to keep as high a standard as possible and not, sort of like go further and say, well, we're going to, do X, Y, and Z. And the other thing that stood out as well is that he cited that a number of EU countries have done a review on workers' rights in the past, where actually it's only a handful. And I think it's only about 3 or 4. Don't ask me to name them right enough, but I want to draw your attention. I've actually looked out this and I found an article which is quite interesting, and the Richard Arthur, who is the head of the trade union law at Thomson Solicitors, is basically saying that the government will doubtless seek to present its proposals on EU workers' rights as part of the economic recovery plan from coronavirus. But history shows that the Conservative governments do to employment rights when left unchecked. And the irony is that the rights of the frontline workers, have been relied on to protect them during the pandemic, with regards taking breaks, having access to PPE, even so far as holiday pay and stuff like that. These have all been threatened in the past, and you're not going to tell me that the Tories are going to suddenly have an attack of conscience and say that they are not wanting to further erode the benefits that workers currently enjoy at this moment in time. The whole idea of coming out of Europe is because Britain wanted to do things differently. And that does mean an erosion of workers' rights. It does mean an attack on the 48-hour week. They will. The Tories have systematically watered down the trade union bill for the last 20, I would suggest the last 35, 45 years. It started with Thatcher, and every term of office since that's been occupied by the Conservative Party, they have attacked the trade union bill with a vengeance. Because they have got no interest in workers having any rights whatsoever, and it benefits their attitude to corporate greed, that they have a low financed, high functioning workers. Sort of like front, who will basically be at the behest of any unscrupulous employer. You only need to look at the emergence of the gig economy to actually find out that the people like Uber Eats and all these sort of like low investment companies that basically have got the workers, I hate to say it, but pretty much, strung up by the short and curlies, because if they don't provide their own personal protection equipment, if they don't provide their own vehicles, if they don't provide their own insurance, whatnot and what have you, then they don't get any work. Now, when you think back to back to the economy of the 70s, if an employer required goods to get from A to B, he would furnish you with a van in order to do it. He would give you training in order to drive the van. You would get a van mate. So that you're not breaching the health and safety with regards, heavy lifting or, whatnot, what have you. usually these people were terminalized as banksmen, so that they could reverse they could help reverse the vehicle in. Obviously that's a health and safety issue. If the driver takes a blackout at the wheel and stuff like that, he's always got somebody to back him up there. So again, you've just constantly seen that these rights being taken away from workers, and everything's been systematically watered down ever since. So I wouldn't put any stock into the Kwasi Kwarteng's intentions of upholding the rights that the workers have got at this current moment in time.
Yeah, well, we will obviously keep an eye on that as that story moves on. But we move on just now, and the SNP has called for the Tory government to deliver a major compensation package for farmers, producers, and exporters of meat, after produce worth hundreds of thousands has been left rotting at the border due to Brexit costs, red tape, and bureaucracy. A report in today's Times underlines the damage done to farmers and producers, with meat exporters warning the industry is being crippled by Brexit red tape. DH Foods said it had 5 containers of fresh pork stuck in Rotterdam for a fortnight, completely rotten, due to added paperwork. Another exporter said it had 115 tonnes of meat, valued at £500,000, impounded at Calais. It comes as the British Meat Processors Association warned that meat exports to the EU are at 20% of normal levels, and said the new post-Brexit customs system for meat products is convoluted, archaic, and badly implemented. If continental supermarkets are unable to have products delivered the way they need them to be, this trade will simply be lost, as EU customers abandon UK suppliers and source products from European processors. So, Chris, this is something we've been talking about, obviously, around fish particularly, but it's affecting all kinds of food exports. Do you expect the UK government to do anything to compensate these suppliers, even if they can't necessarily change the rules?
Absolutely not. Compensation is the last thing on the minds of the Tories. And, it's interesting to point out as well that, this will just lead some companies, the likes of France, Italy, Germany, to source their meat products from another EU country, such as Spain or Italy, or it was interesting last week. Tucker actually said that the price of lamb is actually going through the roof at this moment in time, and that actually got me wondering as to, well, if this is going to force prices up in Scotland or in Britain, currently we're still under the despotic rule of the UK Union. It beggars belief as to what the actual merits of Brexit really were. This was always going to be the case that the whole idea of Brexit was to cut down red tape, according to Nigel Farage. And yet you see that you've got rotten meat at the borders, you've got rotten fish at the borders, you've got supermarkets in Northern Ireland who can't get access to fresh produce such as courgettes, peppers, aubergines. The list is endless, and quite simply it's because it was left to get done at the last minute, with no adherence to any of the concerns that were being raised by the other parties. I mean, I think our colleague Sam Payton last night said as well that the wagons of fish that were circling Parliament yesterday and stuff like that, the Tories won't blink an eye at that action, because unfortunately the Scottish fishermen will stop short at doing what the French would do, where they would just ramp up, and empty their loads right at the front of 10 Downing Street. So I'm afraid that this is just it's going to get worse before it gets a hell of a lot better, and it's never going to replicate what we had. And in order for Scotland to have what we had, quite simply, we have to become an independent European nation.
Well, we're staying at Westminster now, and the UK government is facing a growing backlash over its plans to cut universal credit for 6 million people, after Tory MPs abstained in a vote on the issue in Parliament last night, including every single Scottish Tory MP. Following the vote, anti-poverty charities have spoken out. Helen Barnard, the director of the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, said the incredibly tough situation millions are now facing will be made worse, warning delaying the decision on the future of the universal credit uplift leaves families facing crippling uncertainty. The Poverty Alliance tweeted, "Our society's values are ones of compassion, justice, and protecting one another from harm. Rishi Sunak, to not make the £20 universal credit increase permanent and to not extend the increase to legacy benefits, would go against these deeply held values that we all share." Alison Garnham, the chief executive of the Child Poverty Action Group, said, "In dodging a decision on the universal credit uplift, the government today failed to provide that security and certainty. The £20 uplift has acted as a stabiliser for millions of families forced onto universal credit by coronavirus. If it is not retained and extended to all legacy benefit claimants, struggle will turn to real hardship for many more families at the bleakest point, and more children will show up in the poverty statistics. That would not be easily forgiven by millions of households." Now, Chris, again, this is something we've talked about for a long, long time. Rishi Sunak basically refusing to make a decision at this stage, saying he's going to make a decision when it comes to setting his budget. Why do you think the Tories are so resistant to making a decision on this now, when there is, we have seen before Rishi Sunak making a change, having a change of mind right at the last minute on things like the furlough scheme?
I personally believe that they would have done the exact same whether we were in a. It seems to be a look at as laudable as Marcus Rashford is, but you have to question as to why it takes a footballer in order to prick the conscience of the government of the day, the families depend on these, payments because of it is sometimes the decision between, will I pay the phone bill this month or will I buy food, and that's just the black and white of it. And the Tories don't care whether you pay your bills or whether you buy food or something like that. At the end of the day, they just want the money back, because that is what quintessentially happens. If the government, give you a benefit, obviously you're going to go and spend that benefit in their economy. Their food stores, their post offices and whatnot, what have you. It winds back up in the swirling around the coffers of the UK Treasury anyway. Hence why you would never see a Tory government even contemplating on a system such as UBI, which is really quite bizarre, because if you take what I was setting out there as the fact that the government give you money, you go and spend it in the economy, and then you eventually give it back to them, then surely that a sustainable growing economy, because it doesn't again work in with their championing mantra of corporate capitalism.
Chris,
And
Chris, speaking of supporting businesses, that is our next story now. The SNP's business spokesperson has repeated calls for the Chancellor to confirm that he will extend business support for as long as necessary and to do so ahead of the budget, after the Confederation of British Industry said businesses cannot wait 2 months for clarity. In its budget submission to Chancellor Rishi Sunak, the CBI said businesses cannot be expected to wait nearly 2 months to know whether support will be extended, and called for the UK government to announce an extension to the furlough scheme and business rates holiday before the budget in March. Drew Hendry MP has said the Chancellor must confirm without delay that the furlough scheme and business rates holiday will be extended for as long as necessary, hand over the missing £375 million promised to Scottish firms, devolve financial powers to the Scottish Government, and deliver a meaningful fiscal stimulus of at least £98 billion. The call comes exactly a week after figures revealed that retailers suffered their worst annual sales performance on record in 2020, and after warnings from the Federation of Small Businesses that 250,000 small businesses could be forced to close this year due to a lack of government support. And Chris, you mentioned there UBI, and this is one of the arguments that is made often from the right wing in support of UBI, is that it does enable people to keep spending money in businesses. It would be a form of support for businesses just directed through customers. What do you make of this? And again, what do you make of the government, the UK government, not offering this certainty to business, given that the Tories always claim to be the party of business?
Well, it's quite bizarre when you think of the merits of UBI. You would actually think that the Tories would be in favour of it. When Rishi Sunak introduced the furlough scheme back in March, I did say on this show that it is a kind of like, for want of a better word, a socialist agenda. You know, to actually redistribute the wealth around the country in order to try and keep the economy going. And whilst Rishi Sunak, I would probably, if I was to say anything decent about the man, I would probably say that he's more proactive than any other chancellor has been for the Tory party. But he's obviously having his wings clipped because he would never dare come out with the idea of discussing UBI. You know, because that's just not part of Boris Johnson's vision for Britain, because at the end of the day, it's all about corporate capitalism, as I say, champions anything that the Tories would do. And in corporate capitalism, the last person that is given a thought is actually the working class. The whole point of corporate capitalism is actually to benefit the rich investors, hedge fund managers, the money men that actually put the money into the business first and foremost. You know, I mean, earlier on today, I was reading a story about a guitar firm that has recently been bought out by the workers, and it is now operating as a firm which, you know, all the profits are being shared by the actual workforce. And that is what I would like to see in a modern Socialist Republic of Scotland.
Well, we move on just now, and just apologies to anybody who's trying to lip read Chris. There's obviously a slight delay in the picture. We think at least you are still getting the sound on time, so we do apologise if that's confusing to you. But we move on just now, and the UK government is facing a backlash from the creative arts sector after failing to commit to reversing their decision to end performers' touring visas post-Brexit. Pete Wisher MP, who secured an urgent question on the subject today, said the decision by the UK government cut long-enduring creative ties with our European neighbours, but vowed that the fight to secure visa-free travel for performers was not over yet. Last week, it was revealed that the EU proposal to grant UK performers visa-free tours was rejected by British negotiators because the UK government did not want to extend the same courtesy to EU artists visiting the UK. Speaking in the Commons today, Tory Minister Caroline Dinenage confirmed that as a result of Brexit, performers and creatives touring in the EU will be required to check domestic immigration and minister rules for each member state in which they wish to tour. So, Chris, obviously, Pete Wisher has a history of touring. I mean, he was a professional musician for many years. What do you think the reasoning behind this this refusal to have a reciprocal agreement on musicians' visas is with the EU? Do you think there is just a determination to cut Britain off culturally?
Um, I think what Britain are trying to do is they're trying to sort of like exercise their political muscle and try and adhere as much to the original arguments that were put out for Brexit, which was the curtailing of freedom of movement. It's just the fact that the people that voted for Brexit didn't actually think that freedom of movement was actually going to affect them. They just thought it was going to affect, people of a different skin colour. And I think this would be a major climb down if the UK government and the EU actually came to some sort of agreement on this. And I think this will be an ongoing issue. But we have to remember the fact that this was offered by the EU, and the British government actually refused it. In pointing that out, the oxymoron for me in the room is that musicians will no longer be able to do sort of like European tours. If you think back to the day of Queen, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and all the rest of it, who used to tour Europe for about 6 months on end, they wouldn't be able to do that for anything more than 90 days. And then moving into another country, they will have to obviously pre-plan and fill out a load of forms and whatnot and what have you. Whereas my point being is the fact that footballers will still be able to come from the European Union and be able to sign for big money. So, we were just talking about how the corporate capitalism works in Britain. And this is obviously something that, Britain didn't want to curtail, because when there's a footballing star, and perhaps he's got a different skin colour, as long as he's earning money for the British economy, then that's wholly acceptable.
Yeah.
So it's horrendous for the musicians. I'm sure it's one that Tom Arthur, who's a member of the musicians union, will be constantly keeping an eye on. But the wider aspects of this as well is obviously, when you think about the Edinburgh Fringe, the Edinburgh festivals, and European musicians coming into Britain and stuff like that, it's going to be an absolute riot.
Yeah. Well, we move on now and we go across the Atlantic. US President Donald Trump is expected to issue more than 100 presidential pardons during his final hours in the White House, but appears to have been dissuaded from pardoning himself or members of his own family. White House officials say Trump has privately debated with aides whether he should take the extraordinary step of pardoning himself. Some administration insiders have reportedly warned against it, arguing that it would make Trump look guilty. On Sunday, Trump met with his son-in-law Jared Kushner, his daughter Ivanka Trump, and senior advisors to thrash out a lengthy list of pardon requests, according to reports in the Washington Post. The meeting took up much of the day. The president was said to be personally engaged with the details of every case. Some scholars believe a self-pardon would go against the US Constitution, since it violates the basic principle that nobody should be able to judge their own case. However, that issue has never been tested. The White House discussions took place against the backdrop of a looming Senate impeachment trial after the storming on the 6th of January by a pro-Trump mob of the US Capitol building. If convicted, Trump could be disqualified from running again for the presidency in 2024 or any other time. Out of office, Trump will also be vulnerable to prosecution from federal and state authorities over his actions in office and regarding his business empire. So, Chris, presidents often, in fact, almost always pardon a certain number of people on the way out, but most of the time it's people who are perhaps people on death row, people who might have faced some sort of miscarriage of justice.
Issuing a pardon could be one of the most
yet,
controversial
here we
acts of
see
the president.
Trump talking about pardoning 100 of his pals. What do you make of that?
It's again, everything connected with Trump is just bizarre in the extreme. I apologise to viewers that heard a wee bit of sound there. That clip started playing as I was just having a wee read on CNN. Is that I find it bizarre that he actually did contemplate in actually having a pardon for himself, but then basically collapsed into the many advisors that basically said to him, "Look, if you pardon yourself, then it could be seen as an admission of guilt." It'll be. What would be really interesting for me is to see who actually, who are the people that are going to get these pardons? Is it just going to be solely anyone connected with his presidency, or like immediate staff that could be further indicted, later down the line, or one person you can be sure it won't be, and that, unfortunately, that'll be Julian Assange. So it'll be interesting to see maybe if President Biden might have a look at the whole Assange situation. But I'll be tuning in tomorrow to watch the inauguration. I'll have the popcorn at the ready and stuff like that, because it's the last chance to possibly see any fireworks in US politics.
Yeah, well, we will obviously find out in the next 24 hours. But speaking of the inauguration, 2 National Guard members have reportedly been removed from duty protecting Joe Biden's inauguration because of their connections to far-right militia groups. Associated Press reported that 2 US Army National Guard members are being removed from the security mission to secure Joe Biden's presidential inauguration. A US Army official and a senior US intelligence official say the 2 National Guard members have been found to have ties to fringe right-wing militias. No direct plot against Biden was found. The Army official and the intelligence official spoke to the Associated Press on condition of anonymity due to Defense Department media regulations. They did not say which fringe group the Guard members belonged to or what unit they served in. The FBI has been vetting the thousands of National Guard troops sent to cover the inauguration due to security concerns after the violent riot at the Capitol earlier this month. And Chris, this is kind of astonishing, isn't it, that even at this late stage, the FBI is still having to vet members of the US military to determine whether they're part of essentially fascist groups.
Well, I would I would like to think that any vetting is ongoing. And I mean, people. We have to remember that people can become radicalized whilst in service, and it's a fact of life. But it's it shows a certain amount of due diligence by the FBI in order to sort of like e- exclude these two servicemen from their duties. But you know, two is I think that's a stretch of the imagination that just two out of what I mean. I don't know what the current conscript is in the American forces at this. Probably about 80,000. Plucking a number out of the sky. But whether it be the actual home guard or whether it be the actual sort of like regular army, I mean, people have been known through time to have links to far right organisations. I mean, even the FBI sort of like trained half of them. I mean, was it not said that the FBI trained Lee Harvey Oswald, to be a crack sharpshooter?
We're getting into a whole different realm of discussion there, but
the American Army or something like that. I know it is a whole different argument, but it's worth pointing out the fact that people can and will be open to radicalization.
Well, we will, of course, see what happens at the inauguration tomorrow. But President-elect Joe Biden plans to sign dozens of executive orders and send sweeping bills to Congress in his first days in office, aiming to roll back some of Donald Trump's signature policies on immigration and climate change, while taking action to ramp up the government's response to the coronavirus crisis. Executive orders are expected in a number of key policy areas, including major investments in vaccine distribution and cash relief for citizens, rejoining the World Health Organization and the Paris Climate Accords, and repealing many of President Trump's anti-immigration efforts. So, Chris, obviously things like rejoining the World Health Organization and the Paris Accords are important steps just in regaining America's international reputation. What else do you expect, or what else are you hoping for from a Joe Biden administration?
I would seriously hope that, I mean, obviously, regular viewers know my thoughts on the rights of immigrants throughout the world. But I would like him to have a look at the current situation in Mexico and Guatemala. Obviously, the ongoing contentious detentions at Guantanamo Bay as well. That Trump said, fantastically, I think 4 years ago that he wanted to extend it. I think, you and I are possibly singing from the same hymn sheet as that. That we're hoping great things from Biden, from what we've sort of like seen at the sort of start, since Christmas, obviously bodes well. There's even been some suggestion that he would actually snub Boris Johnson in favour of Nicola Sturgeon, which would be ideal. There's that classic clip that was running around YouTube where a British correspondent asked him to say something for the BBC World Service, and he said, "No, I don't speak to the BBC." So, I would. It's obviously great news to find out that he's going to reverse an awful lot of the policies that Trump has introduced into America, during his tenure, because an awful lot of them were very, very right wing. They were very anti-Muslim. Some of them were homophobic, to say the least. So if we can get a good working relationship, I think it could possibly benefit Scotland. I actually think, because I don't actually think that Biden will suffer fools gladly, and I'm talking about Boris Johnson on that score. I think the whole dream of the US British trade deal and stuff like that, I think that's all gone up in smoke now. Thankfully, due to Biden's election. So I would echo exactly what I said, that Biden hopefully won't suffer fools gladly. So.
And just looking towards the inauguration, we've heard obviously about these kind of plots that have been discussed on social media. I mean, you don't have to look far to hear people talking about creating some kind of riot, not just in Washington but in other state capitals. Do you think that's a serious threat? Do you think tomorrow we can expect some degree of violence in America, or do you think after the riot at the Capitol, maybe people have realized that that's not going to get them what they want?
Well, honestly, although I kind of said it tongue in cheek, the fact that I would have the popcorn at the ready, I'm fully expecting something to kick off tomorrow. And let's not forget, was it today or yesterday, in one of the states, it was actually legal to protest against the government. I think, one of the states, I can't remember if it was Richmond or Vermont or something like that, where that, you could legally actually go and shout at the top of your voice and stuff like that, and openly carry firearms at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So I honestly wouldn't rule anything out. And although Trump has been, thankfully taken off of Twitter, some people would say not thankfully, because it, adds a certain amount of comedy to the whole platform. But Ivana Trump has been, constantly tweeting, calling for calm and whatnot, what have you. I think that's too little, too late. He has pressed the button of nationalistic white supremacy, which has, been lying, I would say, not dormant, but it's been, an undercurrent of the theme of American politics since, way back to the Civil War. Do you know what I mean? When you go back to the attitude held by the Southern citizens of America, and that again has been replicated, not to the same scale in Britain, but it was replicated by the Brexit party, the Vote Leave, and all that anti-immigrant rhetoric, which was used as an undercurrent to the whole Brexit thing. Hopefully, as I say, when I was talking about Biden earlier, hopefully we'll see an end to that horrendous. Streak of fascism that is endemic within the American society.
Yeah, we do, of course, wish the very best to all our American friends for the inauguration tomorrow. But we come now to our final story of the evening, and the Scottish Parliament has rejected a controversial bill from Westminster that potentially allows undercover agents to commit crimes. Labour MSPs voted alongside the SNP, Scottish Greens, and the Lib Dems to refuse legislative consent by Holyrood for the so-called Spy Cops Bill after a short debate this afternoon. Holyrood's refusal of consent to the Westminster Bill means it will not cover Scotland once it comes into law. Critics of the Scottish Government have warned that this could leave Scottish police and intelligence agents unable to mount covert operations that involve them committing criminal offences to protect their cover. The Covert Human Intelligence Sources Bill has been introduced at Westminster because criminal activity by police or spies in the UK is currently unregulated. A forthcoming case at the Court of Appeal in London will rule later this year on whether the current rules regarding undercover agents are even lawful. Justice Secretary Humza Yousaf told MSPs that if the appeal court ruled that they were unlawful, that could force Holyrood to introduce emergency legislation to authorise criminal activity by police or spies in Scotland. Now, Chris, I mentioned Labour MSPs. That wasn't necessarily what was expected because Keir Starmer at Westminster ordered Labour MPs and peers to abstain on this bill, saying that Labour would have to do something like this anyway. But Neil Findlay actually made quite a powerful speech in Holyrood today, kind of objecting to this principle. What do you make of this? And do you think that Scotland refusing legislative consent will make any difference to what Westminster is doing?
Well, it might make a bit of difference at this moment in time, but then it might not amount to a whole tin of beans. Once the Tories actually enact their power grab on on Holyrood. With their cause of centralisation of all powers to Whitehall, which means basically that they could just run roughshod over anything that Holyrood says or does, for that matter. And that's also that goes the exact same for the Welsh Parliament as well. Because the power grab just solely isn't down to the Scottish Government. They will do it on the Welsh Assembly, and they'll obviously do it to great effect in Northern Ireland. So, from that respect, people have to. We've made a great play about the whole power grab and stuff like that, and how the Tories say that that it isn't a power grab. But their whole intention is not to have this, because it would if a criminal case was started in London by MI5 or something like that, and it had links to Scotland and whatnot, what have you, there would have to be discussions as to how that is obviously to be policed, because contrary to popular belief, the current relationship that the Scottish police have with the English police, with the Welsh police, is one of full cooperation, and I would envisage that full cooperation to continue, even if we were independent. That this fanciful notion that Scotland wouldn't be able to sell products to England and stuff like that is just absolute Tory rhetoric. So. When you apply that logic to what we're currently discussing, there would have to be some sort of governmental discussion as to how it would be applied going forward. What I'm not surprised about is the fact that the MPs on the Labour benches done what they fantastically do, is sit on their hands and abstain and not actually take a stance on this. When you actually look into the fact that they would want to enable police to commit criminal acts in order to get a conviction. You have to wonder what what is willing to be done in the name of law and order. And there's a whole dark corner of coercion, and I mean, where does it actually end, and and who actually benefits from this set of draconian actions? So, as laudable as it is for the Holyrood to oppose it, also worth pointing out to the viewers the fact that obviously the Scottish Tories voted against it as well.
Yeah, of course. But unfortunately, I mean, it's a subject we could go into a lot more depth with. I'm sure, Chris, you have a lot of thoughts there, but unfortunately, we are pretty much out of time now. So thank you very much to Chris McCusker for joining us, and thank you at home for joining us as well. We really appreciate you spending some time with us here at Broadcasting Scotland. If you are able to support what we do here, we would ask you to please go to broadcastingscotland.scot/register, sign up there as a supporter. And your £5 a month is what helps us keep making programmes here at the channel. We are also, as many of you may know, running a crowdfunder just now to try and raise money to employ some staff, specifically an editor and some journalists. So if you're willing and able to contribute to that, then you can go to broadcastingscotland.scot/donate to make a one-off donation. Now, if you're not able to support us financially, we absolutely understand, and the shows will always be free to view online. But you can still make a big difference for us. Please do follow us on Twitter at Broadcast Scot, like our Facebook page, subscribe to our YouTube channel, find us on the Amazon Fire Stick, and I think you make that a favourite. And then please share the shows around with your family and friends. Word of mouth is by far the best way for us to spread the word about Broadcasting Scotland. So if you like what we do here, please let people know what it is you like and encourage them to give us a try as well. And finally, if you would like to get involved here at Broadcasting Scotland, we do have a lot of opportunities here. There's a lot of things we would love to do if we just had the bodies to get them done. So if you're interested in getting involved in whatever way from wherever you are in Scotland, then please do get in touch with us. We would absolutely love to hear from you. But that is all we have time for tonight. So thank you once again to Chris. Thank you again for joining us. I will be back again tomorrow at 7, but until then, have a great evening. Good night.
The Catalans, the Basques, the Galicians in the Basque.
An independent future for Scotland.
How quickly do you think a referendum can be arranged?
Best practice demands that it should be 6 months.
Just looking at the overall share numbers for Scotland at the moment, the SNP 46.4%.